Legally Speaking, Take 5 with Cindy Crocker.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Crocker. Welcome to Legally Speaking, where we take 5 minutes to answer your questions about the law. Tonight we're discussing big truck accidents. Ben Crocker joins us. Ben is my husband and my law partner and also leads the litigation trial practice at Crocker Law Firm. Thanks for coming, Ben.
You're welcome.
So what would you tell people is different about accidents that involve a big truck than from a more typical accident involving just two cars?
In some ways they're the same, but there are some real important differences in wrecks involving big trucks. Number one, there are certain rules and regulations the trucking companies have to follow. They have to keep certain evidence, driver's logs, things of that sort for a certain period of time, but then they can destroy them, and they often do destroy them, and you can lose that evidence. So it's important to get a lawyer involved real early for that reason.
So you make sure they don't get rid of it by telling them early on to preserve that?
We do. We like to be able to get involved very early so that we can make sure they're preserving that evidence. The other things I will say are different in big truck accidents is two things. Really, they cause bigger injuries just by their
Sure.
size generally. But two, because of their size and because of the danger involved in those, they're required to carry higher insurance limits. And so there's often much more at stake, both from our client and for what we can do for them.
Great points. Let's see what questions other people have to ask us about this. Here's a question from Christy D. from Bowling Green. Do I make a case against the driver of the truck or the company that owns the truck?
Usually, at least both of those. Usually the driver is working for an employer, and when we bring a suit involving a big truck, it's usually against the driver himself, and it's usually also against his employer, the trucking company, or whoever he's working for at the time.
Are there other potential defendants in that kind of case?
There can be. Sometimes maintenance is done by somebody else, and if a maintenance issue led to the wreck, we could bring a case against them. There could also be a different company that's loading the truck, and sometimes shifts in the cargo can be one of the causes or the cause of a wreck. So those are potential parties in a case involving a big truck as well.
It sounds like you really have to do some investigation about what caused the accident to know where your claims lie.
That's exactly right, and we pretty regularly hire people who are experts in accident reconstruction. Again, we like to get them involved earlier because sometimes the evidence at the scene disappears. So they can see skid marks, they can see evidence there at the scene, they can see where the police have marked on the road, and they can give us opinions on exactly what happened there.
Interesting. I think we have another question. Do these big trucks have different insurance than I might have on my car?
There is very different insurance. As I mentioned earlier, because they have the ability to do such a strong amount of damage, they're required to carry higher limits, and they do carry higher limits. That meaning they have more insurance available for people who are injured by them. So typically when you're involved in a trucking case, you're going to see much more insurance that's available.
And I imagine in certain cases you might have the assets of the trucking company involved as well.
That's right, and there are some very large, there's a small number of very large trucking companies that you'll see, and in those cases the insurance limits are almost irrelevant because they do have a large number of assets,
multi-million-dollar
trucks and multi-million-dollar companies that the policy limits become less important.
Well, great. I think that's all very helpful. This has been a great discussion. You can watch this discussion again by finding us on crockerfirm.com, where you can also suggest topics that you would like to see us discuss and submit your questions for some of the topics we've chosen to cover in the coming weeks. Thank you, and join us next time on Legally Speaking Take 5.